Okay, so this video is going to look at the endocrine system in our bodies, basically the way we produce hormones, and shutdown and PCT. I originally did this presentation at bodypower in the lab area, but I thought it would be useful to repeat it here. So, hopefully, the software I'm using won't balls up, as it has done twice already, or should I say I failed to use it correctly, and we can get through this in one hit. So what we're looking at is the HPTA, or in the female, the HPOA, the hypothalamus pituitary testicular axis, or the hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis. Which is this? It's the hypothalamus in the brain, which is located near the hippocampus, just below the hippocampus, which produces gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH. That then stimulates pituitary, which is situated below the hypothalamus, and that produces LH or luteinizing hormone and FSH or follicle stimulating hormone. These then have an action in the testes or the ovaries and produce hormone. And the whole system has feedbacks. So, if you look at the hypothalamus, you'll see it there, the little purple area under the hippocampus, and what you'll also see below that is a pair of what looks like a pair of green bollocks. That is your pituitary. Yes, it looks like brain balls. So your hypothalamus releases GnRH or gonadotropin releasing hormone. This in turn signals the pituitary to release luteinizing hormone, which stimulates hormone production in the testes and the ovaries. So in the testes, it stimulates the production of testosterone, and FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, which in the testes stimulates production of sperm. So when we look at the testes, now this looks more complex than it actually is. We see at the top the hypothalamus, and we see that releasing GnRH. That small negative symbol in the circle at the side of it means that there is a feedback there. It has hormone sensors, and both androgens, estrogens, and progesterone, so progesterone and estrogen, can all trigger a reduction in GnRH. That then stimulates the pituitary underneath, which release FSH and LH. LH then goes to the Leydig cells in the testes, which in turn produce testosterone from using cholesterol. And FSH goes to the Sertoli cells, which produce sperm. You'll note that testosterone also has an arrow to the Sertoli cells. And this is because testosterone in itself can stimulate sperm production, which is why you see users that have been on cycle for extended period of times still able to reproduce. It's person specific, but this is the reason why it happens. What we don't know is whether the production, excuse me while I silence my phone, what we don't know is whether this production stimulated from exogenous, artificial testosterone, has any impact on messenger expression within the DNA, and therefore any impact on the offspring resulting from that. You'll also notice that there are feedback systems, both at the pituitary and the GnR and at the hypothalamus. So in both these cases, raising levels of hormones can cause shutdown of these signals. But also there is feedback within the testes themselves. Inhibins within the testes themselves can prevent hormone production, which is why, irrespective of what stimulating drugs you run on cycle, you cannot produce natural hormone whilst you're on cycle. Now, hormone production itself, it comes from cholesterol. So cholesterol is converted to pregnenolone, which is then converted to progesterone or DHEA, and that then comes in the precursor of testosterone within the testes. Outside of the testes, 5-alpha reductase then converts testosterone to DHT or dihydrotestosterone, and aromatase converts testosterone to estrogens. So below testosterone, all those functions happen outside the testes, and above, all that happens within the testes. Now, when you add in external hormone levels actually rise very, very quickly. And even with long-lasting esters like enanthate, you're going to see blood plasma peak at around 36 hours. The hormone receptors at the hypothalamus and the pituitary and within the testes themselves sense rising levels and start to decrease the output of signaling hormones and the output of hormone production. Eventually, if levels continue to rise or are left sustained elevated, production will cease, or what we commonly know as shutdown. And when luteinizing hormone production is ceased and is no longer signaling the Leydig cells within the testes, then those cells will start to degrade and atrophy and waste away and shrink. As like I said, we have feedback systems throughout the system, so at every point it can sense rising levels of hormone. When we are shut down, we cease the production of GnRH, we cease the production of LH and FSH, resulting in testicular atrophy and Leydig cell atrophy. Now, when you look at bloods of people that are shut down, you'll see that FSH and LH signaling is usually around 0.3. So if your levels are at that, you are shut down. So what about ladies? Can they get shut down as well? Well, yes. They have the same signaling hormones, they have the same sensors, and as levels rise, they will reduce. So in a female, GnRH triggers the pituitary to release FSH and LH. LH goes into the Theta cells, and FSH goes into granulosa cells, and hormone is produced. What you will also notice is that cholesterol converts to the same precursor hormone for testosterone as it does in a male, and that in turn is then converted to estrogen. In fact, all estrogen in the female at one point was testosterone. Now, what you'll see on this is that not all hormones are produced in the ovaries. So, of the testosterone produced in a female, 25% comes from the ovaries, 25% comes from the adrenal gland, and 50% is actually converted in tissue. That testosterone is then converted to DHT or estrogen. So female have testosterone production in 3 areas of the body: the ovaries, the adrenal gland, and tissue. So they don't generally get the same sort of shutdown as males do, but they do. They can get shutdown. Shutdown does happen, and several women have seen to struggle for recovery post-cycle. Obviously, dose and duration is a big influencing factor in this. Now, one of the reasons why generally women recover quite well is because their bodies are used to very low periods of hormone production. And as a result of that, it is used to kickstarting itself. But sometimes it does need an helping hand, and sometimes it does need some post-cycle therapy or some PCT. So the objective of PCT, post-cycle therapy, is to recover the GnRH production, and in turn recover production from the pituitary of FSH and LH, and recover the Leydig cells, which result in a return to normal hormone production. The weak point in all this is the Leydig cells. In fact, studies are showing that 70% of repeat users will not recover and will end up being testosterone dependent. GnRH and FSH and LH production generally do recover quite well. The big area of concern is the Leydig cells in the testes. Now, in order to recover this function, we look at 3 drugs. So we look at HCG, a human chronic gonadotropin, which mimics LH. We look at Novadex, a selective estrogen receptor modulator, which blocks receptors at the hypothalamus. And Clomid, or clomiphene citrate, which is also a selective estrogen receptor modulator, which blocks receptors at the pituitary. Now, when you finish your cycle, your exogenous test levels will start to decline, in line with their dose and their half-life. So it is important to know your half-lives because you don't want to start your PCT too early, because you've already got elevated exogenous levels in exogenous hormone levels in there. So your half-life will determine how long it takes that hormone to reduce by half. As you can see from this list, propionate, acetate, 3 days, 4.5 days. Enanthate, 10.5 days. Cypionate is very similar. On this it shows 12. There's some debate over exactly whether it's 10.5 or 12 days, but it's a very, very similar time scale. Now, some will argue that because the Leydig cells are the bottleneck, that you want to try and have the Leydig cells recovering while your hormone levels are still on decline, so that they are up and ready to roll as soon as your exogenous hormone levels drop below level and the call for natural production starts. And these are the big area of recovery. So with use they deteriorate, then with the introduction of HCG they start to reform. Unfortunately they don't always fully reform, and if you use too much HCG or use it too often, they can desensitize. They will recover from this desensitization, but it will prolong your PCT for several weeks. And it's the time that these take to recover that really governs the time of your PCT and how long your PCT will take to recover. And like I said, at some point for most people, they just won't recover anymore. So the perfect scenario is as your exogenous hormones decrease, your Leydig cell integrity increases and they cross over. And then just as the hormones levels get too low and the body starts to increase the signaling for production, the Leydig cells are nice and full and healthy and can pick up and take over hormone production. But do remember those inhibins, like I said, they will keep localized production shut down until hormone levels have decreased to the point where there is a call for hormone production. So that's how we recover Leydig cells, but what about GnRH and FSH and LH? Well, Novadex blocks the receptors at the hypothalamus. This results in increased signaling hormone outputs. In fact, in healthy adults, Novadex treatment for low testosterone has been shown to increase test levels by up to 50%. And Clomid blocks the pituitary, again increasing the output of SH and LH. So Novadex increases GnRH output and Clomid increases FSH and LH output. And as long as we don't have this negative feedback of inhibins due to elevated levels, then hormone production should start as long as the Leydig cells are capable of producing. Now, primary hypergonadism, which is when your testes can no longer produce hormone, is the most common form of issues within ASS users, and it is 99% of the time down to Leydig cell degradation. Secondary hypergonadism is where you lose signal from the hypothalamus to the pituitary. That is rare. That is less common, and generally those areas will recover quite well. So the area of concern, as I've already said, 70% repeat users will become TRT dependent. The area of concern in all cases is these Leydig cells. Well, that should give you an idea. If the shutdown of Leydig cells is what initially causes the problem, and HCG can maintain Leydig cell integrity because it mimics LH, then can we present Leydig cells in the first place? Yes, to some degree. To how effective this is, we're not sure. But a dose of around 250 IU every second of third day would appear at this point to prevent Leydig cell damage. But do remember, we do have a desensitization issue if you overuse HCG. And HCG can and does aromatize. So you may find an increase in estrogen levels, and that may be something you have to keep a tighter eye on. And the ladies, well, their PCT is different. They can require it. First protocol would be DHEA supplementation, and generally you're looking around 25 to 50 milligram ED. In fact, it is generally prescribed DHEA as a treatment for low androgen in women, and as I said, 50% of women suffer from low androgens. However, if they are properly shut down, and their symptoms are very similar to males, so sex drive, fatigue, depression, those sort of things, then 50 milligrams of Clomid from day 4 to day 8 of their menstrual cycle should be enough to PCT a female, but bear in mind that that drug usage at that point would also heavily influence fertility. So it is important as a female that you track your cycle days even though you are on a cycle and you are no longer menstruating. So what about blast cruise versus a cycle and PCT? Now, it is much more common for people these days to opt for blast cruise and opt for TRT in between cycles. And their main reason for this is there is no PCT. They don't get the side effects from Clomid, which can be particularly harsh. There is no risk of hormone crash. And the one that everybody quotes, I'm going to maintain my gains. I don't want to lose size. I'm big now, so I need testing all the time to maintain my size, which is a lot of bollocks. You've got to be particularly large before that becomes an issue. However, the negatives from this are you're going to increase the risk of hypergonadism, i.e. becoming drug dependent. You may not care about that, and generally a lot of users don't, but that is going to significantly increase. And bear in mind that though testosterone can stimulate sperm production, it can also cause infertility. You're going to get an increase in stress and drug toxicity because you're on for longer periods of time. As a result, there is an increased risk of dependency. The longer you stay on, the more you're going to associate your gains and your progress with drug use, and the harder it is going to be to cease that drug use. And as a result of all that, there is an increased health risk. But what about PCT? Well, it gives the body a break. It reduces overall toxicity in the body. It reduces the risk of hypergonadism, and it is healthier, but it's harder mentally to do. You're going to have time drug-free post-PCT, which sometimes is not easy for people to do both mentally and both time schedule-wise, depending on competitions and how their competition series sets up. There are side effects from PCT, particularly Clomid. You're possibly going to have a period of low hormone and feel pretty shit for a few weeks. And it's a lot less forgiving. If you've not got drugs in your system, then areas of weakness within your diet and training are going to show up, where the drugs will allow some masking of that and cover your arse a little bit if you're a bit slack in those areas. So, there you go. Any questions? Okay. Post your questions below and I will answer them in comments as much as I can. If need be, we'll get another video done in order to address any questions that arise from this.